Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing episode number 9 in my series on books that I loved to teach. And today's book is Sophocles' play Antigone. One of the 3 senior English courses that I taught for a good part of my career was Advanced Placement English Literature. And we did a whole unit on Greek drama. I taught Agamemnon, I taught Medea, Sophocles' Oedipus, and also Antigone. Sophocles wrote what have come to be known as the Theban plays. And this is a cycle of 3 plays that includes Oedipus the King, Antigone, and Oedipus at Colonus. These are 3 plays that are not really meant to be a trilogy exactly, but they all deal with the family of Oedipus. We believe that Antigone, while it takes place at the end of the chronology, it's the last play in terms of, what happens to these characters. We believe that it was the first play in the group that Sophocles wrote, and that he probably wrote it 14 or 15 years before he wrote Oedipus, Oedipus the King. We all know the basic story of Oedipus. Even if you haven't read it, everybody kind of knows what Oedipus is famous for. Oedipus is given a prophecy by an oracle that he is going to kill his father and marry his mother. To prevent this horror from happening, he leaves his home in Corinth and sets out on the road in an effort to prevent this catastrophe. Of course, everything goes wrong. On his journey, in what is probably the first recorded case of road rage, Oedipus meets up with an older man in a chariot. And this older man, tells Oedipus to get out of the way, to get off the road, and a fight ensues between the two of them over who has the right of way on the road. The man attempts to hit Oedipus with his scepter. Okay, so this is a kingly figure, and Oedipus kills the man. He kills the old man. Now, the audience, of course, a Greek audience, would already know this whole story. And so everybody, and a modern audience kind of knows the story too. So you want to, yell at Oedipus not to kill this man. Okay. But he does. He kills the man who turns out to be, of course, King Laius of Thebes, who we find out is actually Oedipus's real father. He too, this old man, when he was a younger man, was given a prophecy that he was going to die at the hands of his own son. He's told that his son is going to kill him. And so to prevent this from happening, he sends his infant son off with a servant and instructs the servant to kill the baby. But the baby isn't killed. And that's a whole other story, but Oedipus ends up, the servant gives Oedipus to a shepherd, and the shepherd gives Oedipus to a couple that can't have children, and Oedipus never knows about this background. He doesn't know that he was adopted. He was never told anything about his origins. He believes that the couple that raised him, he believes that they are his actual parents. And he leaves, he goes out on the road to protect them. So, this isn't all his fault. He didn't have all of the right information. But still, the first guy you meet along the road after you've been told that you're in danger of killing your father, the first guy you meet, you kill him? Not smart, Oedipus. So anyway, a whole bunch of horrible things are eventually uncovered. Even though Oedipus, in his play, does everything in his power to avoid hearing the truth, to avoid having the truth be uncovered. And what the truth is that he has, in fact, murdered his biological father, and he has, in recent years, been married to Jocasta, Queen Jocasta, who is his biological mother. And the 4 children that he has had with Jocasta are actually his brothers and sisters. Okay, this is the quintessential Greek tragedy. It perfectly fits Aristotle's definition of a Greek tragedy as outlined in his Poetics. Now, we fast forward many years, and we're going to take a look at what has happened to these 4 children of Oedipus, who are also his siblings. Although Antigone was the first of the plays to be written, at least in this cycle, it is the last in terms of the chronology of the story. Antigone, who is Oedipus's daughter and also his sister, because he was married to his own mother, she is left with a horrific conflict. Oedipus and Jocasta both are dead when the story of Antigone takes place. They're long gone. The Oedipus children, these 2 daughters and 2 sons, have been living in the house of Creon, King Creon of Thebes. The 2 brothers are Polynices and Eteocles, and these 2 brothers get into a terrible fight over power. They both want power. They end up killing each other in battle. Now, King Creon sees one of the brothers as being loyal to him and loyal to Thebes, and he sees the other brother as being a traitor, as having gone against the city of Thebes. So Eteocles is considered the good brother. He's the one who is perceived as fighting to defend Thebes, and so he is granted a burial. Polynices is perceived by Creon to be the traitor. And so Creon decrees that Polynices shall not be granted a burial. Rather, his corpse is to be left out to the elements, where it will be devoured by animals like vultures and wild dogs. It is this edict that the king has issued that causes Antigone to defy the state, because she believes that her loyalty has to be to her brother and to both brothers. So if one brother gets a burial, she believes that the other brother should have the same burial. Without burial, it was also believed, the body can't go on to the underworld and to eternity. So both parties in this instance, both parties believe wholeheartedly that they are right. Creon, with his edicts, believes that loyalty to the state is the most important quality, that there is no principle or value that comes any higher than loyalty to the state. Antigone believes that family comes first, that family ties are in fact sacred, and that her duty is first and foremost to her family and therefore to her brother, that she has to get his body buried. Both of them are right and both of them are wrong, because each one is oversimplifying the situation, and each one refuses to see that there could possibly be any other interpretation, or that there could possibly be any gray areas, or that there could possibly be some kind of compromise. Both think that they are absolutely right. Antigone is filled with pride as well. She feels very self-righteous. She is completely convinced that she is doing what is right by her family, and she believes that she is doing what the gods would want her to do. Creon condemns Antigone to a slow death. His thinking is that he will have her captured and imprisoned after he finds out that she has in fact buried her brother. The idea in having her captured and imprisoned in a cave is that he won't directly kill her, but rather by leaving her imprisoned in a cave, she will eventually starve to death. And so she will die, but not exactly at his hands. And so he has her captured and he has her imprisoned. He is eventually made to see the folly of his ways. And there are a whole bunch of things that happen that finally convince him that he has made a terrible, terrible mistake. And he attempts desperately to reverse the edict that he has made against Antigone. But he's too late. An ancient audience, back around the time when these plays were first performed, an ancient audience would have already known the whole story and the outcome. People would know what was going to happen, because many different playwrights wrote these same stories in their plays. Sophocles' Antigone is not the only version of Antigone. So what was interesting to people watching these plays would be how a particular playwright would interpret the story and how he would produce the play. There was no such thing as spoilers. Everybody knew the story. Everybody knew how it was going to end. And even today, modern audiences pretty much know, people know who Oedipus was. They know what he did, what happened to him. And probably the Antigone story, well, maybe not quite as well known. It's pretty well known. So when I was teaching Antigone, our discussion would focus on the following big questions. What does the play have to say about the role of women in ancient Greek society? How does this play illustrate Aristotle's concept of the tragic hero, which we would also have learned about first? Next, to whom does a person owe loyalty? To family, to the state, to one's king, to the gods, to one's own principles. So, these would be things that these would be our overarching questions. And then, most importantly, what exactly is civil disobedience, and when is it justified? My students would also write the required advanced placement type of expository essays. They would write about the following topics, and these topics were topics that I adapted from past AP AP exams. All of the questions are always released, so you have a bank of essay questions and multiple choice questions and all kinds of questions. So I would have my students write on some actual advanced placement questions. Here's an example. It has often been said that what we value can be determined by what we sacrifice. Write about a character who has deliberately sacrificed or surrendered something in a way that highlights that character's values. It's almost as if that question was written for the play Antigone. Another was this. The conflict created when the will of an individual opposes the will of the larger society is a recurring theme throughout literature in many novels and plays. Analyze this conflict and discuss the moral and ethical implications of both the individual and the society as it appears in Sophocles' Antigone. And finally, this. One of the strongest human drives seems to be a desire for power. Discuss how a character in a drama struggles to free him or herself from the power of others, or how he or she seeks to gain power over others. Additionally, we would spend a great deal of time talking about the concept of civil disobedience. We would read excerpts actually from Thoreau's essay on the duty of civil disobedience. And then we would try to determine what Thoreau's central argument was about following one's own conscience, rather than necessarily following a law that one believes to be unjust. And then we would apply Thoreau's theories and see how they could help us talk about what was happening in Antigone. This would lead us to research and discuss modern and contemporary issues of civil disobedience, throughout more modern history than the ancient Greeks. Bringing an ancient play into more modern and or contemporary times. That's always a good thing. And then, Antigone doesn't suddenly seem like something that was, written thousands of years ago. Issues that, students would research would be things like, the women's suffrage movement, segregation defiance, the whole civil rights movement, gay rights movements, various protest movements against wars, especially the Vietnam War. Protests that have gone on about the climate and about the earth. Students would research various topics of interest from more modern times and bring those into the discussion to see how public nonviolent acts have been committed throughout history in order to bring about change, in order to bring about changes in laws and in the ways that government acts. So suddenly a play that was first produced in 441 BC or somewhere around then suddenly doesn't seem quite so ancient. So anyway, that's a little bit about another work that I loved to teach in my long career as a high school English teacher. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.